Hello and welcome to my YouTube channel, dear friends, dear viewers. I will continue checking different games and trying to find some new ideas, some new moves in different openings. So let's start. Yes, already in my YouTube channel I posted part 1, where about 1 hour I'm checking different games and trying to analyze that games with modern engines. So we will continue doing that work now. So let me order some engine. Super chess is fine usually. And what can we... Yes, usually I like this one for 0.70. But let's see what else are we having. So this I don't like much. This is LC. This one is very expensive. This is again LC. I guess this one will be fine. For example, let's say this one. This should be fine. Here we are. Alexander Grishuk against MVL. This is Champions Chess Tour. Yes, and recently a lot of top players started going c4, c5, even with a knight on f3 and black's knight on f6, and even directly. So we see that c takes d, the strongest, and white is choosing, yes, queen a4, queen d7, queen d4, doesn't change much, queen d4, queen d5, knight d4, knight d5. Knight d4, you just take with the knight. Yes, queen a5, knight c3, knight d5. White is having bishop d2, so takes, knight f3. Yes, e4, you go back, and again white is having some moves like knight c3 or bishop b5. Queen d4, queen d5, knight c3 takes a6. We see that g3 is the strongest. Yes, e5. Knight is coming to c6. Yes, and here engine is showing a5 and knight c6. Yes, I think it's the same. So knight c6, bishop g2, a5, or a5, bishop g2, knight c6. Let's say this, and a5. And bishop d2 by Alexander Grishuk. Wow, Grishuk's rating is 2689. Wow, I don't remember him having 2600. He always been 27 plus. So bishop d2, bishop e3, knight a4, short castle are the moves. Yes, Grishuk had this idea. Yes, you can go short castle, knight a4. I think knight a4 Pragg maybe played against Hikaru, or Pragg Hikaru. Knight b5, bishop b4. Yes, you can see that black is doing fine. So bishop d2, some new idea, I guess. And not really nice c1, knight b5. King d8, the strongest. Knight c1, bishop b4. Knight c3 back. And here Maxim went wrong. Knight d4 is the strongest. Yes, a3 has been played. And you don't go knight d3, a takes b, rook b1, you start with rook b1. Maybe it's the same more or less. Bishop f5, knight d3. And this is slightly better for white. Okay, let's continue checking. Another game, they also had this. And yes, instead of bishop b4, bishop e6, which is also not the strongest. So between the games, MVL didn't really check, because we clearly say that bishop b4 is the strongest. So bishop e6, and white is better. Yes, after short castle. Bishop e6 not the strongest. So knight d3, and black had the c4. Knight goes f4 and bishop c4. Bishop c4 and now knight a3. Let's say what is being better. So twice MVL played, but twice he didn't react precisely and got unpleasant position. So Jan against MVL, Najdorf, and Jan goes knight b3. I think this year in French Team Championship I faced this knight b3 in my game against Albornoz Cabrera. Yes, if you go queen e3, queen e2, then endgame is slightly unpleasant. Knight bd2, oh yes, maybe another move is there, queen e2. Yes, queen f3, queen d2, queen e2. Maybe Albornoz Cabrera played queen e2. I'm not exactly sure, but I think he played, or oh, he probably went queen d2. So queen d2 with the idea long castle. So black goes queen c7, long castle. Yes, b5, a3, stopping all b4 ideas. And here, yes, bishop b7 or bishop e7. MVL played bishop e7, but he could also go bishop b7. Yes, this. Queen e1, bishop f6, rook g1, bishop d3. h6, bishop h4. Yes, h6, bishop h4. No, h6 and not bishop h4. Or bishop takes f6, h4 by MVL, by Jan. Yes, this doesn't work. I mean, h4 is not good. Black is just fine after bishop b7. So he took, played king b1, h5, black is just fine. More than fine. Let's continue checking further. MVL against Jan. Yes, Petrov. Yes, bishop f5 is the strongest move. Bishop g4 has been played by Jan. h3. I knew this. You go h3. You have also rook e1, but okay, h3. Bishop h5. Of course, always you can go rook e1, but g4, bishop goes g6, and knight e5. So MVL played this, knight d7, black is already fine. Rook b1. Yes, many moves are possible. b6, b5, b5, h3, bishop h5, g4, bishop g6, takes, and black is already better. Let me have this evaluation. d5, c takes d, rook takes b5. Yes, black could go knight f6, maybe. What if I push g5? You attack. Yes, 94 c3 hanging. I apologize. So knight b6, bishop e3, Jan played queen c7, bishop d4, rook e8, queen d3. Yes, knight c4 was there, and if rook d5, I guess some queen c6. That's queen c6. Bishop f8, and slowly white is getting maybe tiny better position. King g2, and again knight c4. Jan goes, and Jan misses this move, but rook f and rook a8 is the strongest, which is not easy move. So rook e6, rook a5, and MVL finds this move, rook d7, rook b5, putting some pressure on d5, queen d8, rook a6, queen c8, rook a5, attacking on a7, and this knight g5. Yes, Jan blunders this because f takes e, I guess queen g6 comes. Rook d6, queen g3, and if you take f takes or rook e6, there is queen h4, and here rook e8. Not the only move, but nice one. And here after queen e4, not even knight takes e4. Yes, but out of the opening, MVL didn't get anything. Yes, this is very interesting. Move order and line. Fedosiev played some games. Yes, e4, he goes c5. Yes, knight f3 c takes the queen, d4 or knight d4 is possible, d5. And already we see that 0.60, 50, 60 for white. And yes, queen d5 maybe doesn't look obvious. Maybe doesn't look. And if, let's say, queen d5, you don't take with a knight, you take with a pawn. Yes, doesn't look very obvious. This knight e7 or knight f6, let's say knight f6, bishop c4, knight takes d5, bishop takes d5, bishop e7. Arjun played knight e2, he could also go knight f3, short castle. Yes, and yes, h3, knight f4, short castle, knight c3, short castle, and knight c6 for some reason, stronger, knight d7. Yes, knight c3, knight b6. Yes, and bishop f4, white is being slightly better. Magnus against Alireza, and d3. Just not entering to any complications. d5, knight f6, knight c6, knight c6, g3, d5, queen e2, and Alireza goes knight e7, knight f6, bishop e7, knight f6, knight e7. Okay, knight e7, bishop g2. Yes, some h6, g6 has been played with the idea to go bishop g7, I guess. c3, short castle h4. Yeah, short castle bishop g7, h4, bishop g7, h5, that's why h6. And yes, bishop f4, bishop g7, e5, short castle, bishop g7, e5. Something like this. So e5 has been played. And yes, this is really hard to understand why exactly here black needs b5, because this has been played. Yes, c3, bishop f4, short castle, and let's say if here I go this, some b4, and if here I go this, knight f5. Yes, this is a little bit complicated to understand. c3, and Alireza played b5. Yeah, short castle or knight f5, but he played b5. But this is playable position, slightly better for white. a3, bishop e3, bishop f4, Magnus played. Yes, this is slightly preferable. Like a5, short castle or knight bd2, b4, and short castle. Magnus played a3, b takes, and this is fine position for black again. Okay, let's continue checking. Magnus Alireza, another game. Bishop e2. Yes, this line I recommend. This is very interesting, like knight f6 d3. Yes, e6 is the strongest. Yes, b6 c4 bishop b7, g6 c4 b6. So this a4, maybe we are threatening some a5. Bishop e7 a5. So this and knight fd2. Bishop b7, knight e5 or knight b8. Let's say this. Magnus could push f4. He played this, and yes, it is important to go knight b8 or knight e5. Alireza knew this idea, because knight is not well placed on d7. f4 by Magnus, knight c6, queen e1 by Magnus. What else did I have? Yes, queen e1. Alireza goes bishop e7, bishop d1. Knight f3 by Magnus, and here some d5, e5, knight g4 works. Queen c7, knight d1, d5, e5, queen g3, g6, and something like queen h3, bishop d2, h5. Black is already better. Yes, hard to say what white pieces are doing. Let's continue. Alireza against Magnus, and h4 c5. Yes, knight d2, knight c3, d takes c has been played. Magnus knight c6, Alireza played bishop b5, and Magnus played queen c7. Yes, Magnus is sacrificing on d5. Knight f3, bishop f4, knight c3. Knight f3, bishop c6, knight c3. Yes, knight f3, for example, knight c3 is even stronger. For example, e6 and something like g4. Go d4, g takes, d takes, and here something like this. So knight f3, e6, and here b4. Alireza played bishop e3 and bishop g4 by Magnus. Maybe knight e7 was also possible, but bishop g4 is fine. So what did Alireza play? He played knight bd2, and knight is coming to e7 or h6. Engine for some reason likes e7 more, having control over d5. So Magnus played this, and now some c4, knight f5 ideas are working. c3, knight f5, and this is already fine for black. Like queen e2, bishop e7. Alireza played bishop d4, very solid move, bishop e7, queen a4. Magnus went short castle, bishop takes, pawn takes, knight h2. Yes, h5. So not bishop h5, of course, h5. Magnus went this, queen d4, bishop f5, g4, and f6. G takes, f takes. Yes, this is better for white, but Alireza lost. Alireza Grishuk. Bishop f4. Yes, knight f6. Yes, knight f6, e3, c6, e3. Yes, c6 is another move, no doubts. Yes, e3. And bishop f5 by Grishuk. Yes, knight b7, c6, bishop d6, short castle, so bishop f5. And here queen b3 is the main move. Yes, knight c6, g4, this I remembered. But h3 has been played by Alireza. c6, knight bd7. Yes, g4, bishop g6. Yes, and many other moves are possible, like knight e2, h4. Alireza pushed, and Alireza took on d5, and after c6 black is doing better because knight c7, king f8, and then bishop b4 check is coming. Okay, let's continue checking. Grishuk, Alireza, bishop e2, and here not bishop b4, which is very straightforward move and very concrete play. d5, yes, d5 is another option. He takes d, takes d, bishop b4. Yes, bishop b4, short castle, bishop c3, d6, d5, and queen c7 by Alireza. And what are we having now? We have short castle, we have a3, bishop e3, and knight b5. So this, queen b8, f4, threatening e5, d6, bishop e3, a6, knight d4 you can go, but d5, a takes b, e takes f, b4, f takes g, bishop g7, knight b5, and d5 for short castle, like yes, d5, c3, short castle, bishop d3, short castle, and they had this complicated position. d3, f5, rook f3, c3, e4, c3, we take c, no, bishop d7, we take c was possible, but bishop d7, bishop e3. Yes. Alireza Grishuk, another, yes, instead of h3, knight e2, short castle, knight g3, not bishop g6, bishop e6, rook c1, h3, bishop b5, bishop d3, c5, yes, knight e2, short castle, h3, d takes c, d takes c, bishop c5, yeah, short castle, knight c6, a3, and here d4 was working, so knight c6, b4, and bishop d6, black doesn't have problems. Carsten Aronian, we see, yes, black is having bishop d7, of course, queen c4, c5, knight d5, c6, and knight bd7, queen takes c4. Yes, you can go also c5. Yes, you can go e6 as well. And Magnus plays queen c2, c5, knight c3, queen c7, and here, yes. I think recently Alexander Predke maybe pushed d4 also against Visakh. d4, short castle, b6, d4. b6 is not really working. Bishop f4, bishop d6, takes. b5. Yes, always these d5 ideas are there. Bishop f4. Yes, queen a7 was played in Predke's game. We aren't having it yet. So queen a7 was played, I guess it was d5. Visakh took, knight takes d5, Serbian team championship. a4 was played. e4, d4, a4, a4, b4, like something like this. Okay, Levon played queen b6, and here knight d5 is the strongest. And what's the problem? Bishop b7, you take on d7, of course knight takes d7 and d5. It's not like knight f6, black is going. Maybe Levon had this prepared. So a4 by Magnus and bishop b7, black is already fine. Even Magnus sometimes reacts not very good. Jan against Magnus. Yes, d5 takes. This is Armageddon game, I guess. And we see that knight c3, b takes c, and here two moves are possible. Bishop d6 and queen f6, maybe even bishop d7, bishop d6, of course. Jan played d4, and here short castle is very much possible. Yes, queen f6 by Magnus. I guess this shouldn't be that dangerous. Yes, bishop e7 or bishop c5. Magnus played this, and here, yes, you can take on e5, take on c6, and being slightly better, like what the engine is saying. Bishop c6. Let's say we take on e5. No, not in this way. It's better to start with this. Takes, and you go short castle, or you go queen d4. Yes. d5, a6, and bishop e2 black is already better. Probably queen a4 doesn't work because of rook b8, or even this is possible, and you take knight d7. What about this? I thought about rook b8 move, but I was afraid of this, and now rook is trapped. But you just continue like short castle. I take, yes, bishop h3 or b6. And what Jan has done, knight a5 somehow engine likes. Knight b8, it's still white is better side of this unusual position. e4, short castle, knight d2. Short castle, knight e7, knight d2. Yes, and here, yes, c4 was not good. Yes, Aronian against Vachier Lagrave. Bishop d3 we see. e5, one of the main moves. Yes, we see that knight is going f3, f5, b3, e2. Yes, and knight c6. I guess recently MVL started going knight c6 in this position. Yes, knight d5, knight d5, he takes knight b4, h3, a3, short castle is, and bishop e6, forcing white to go f4 maybe, queen e1, bishop e3, king h1, f4, and taking. Bishop, I guess it's better to take with the knight, and some knight e5. Yes, I think I had this position against Sindarov. Queen e2, h3, bishop e3, a4, so b3. But b3 directly doesn't work. You know. Yes, you should play some bishop e3 stuff. Black doesn't commit bishop on e7 to always have this g6, bishop g7. Yes, it is interesting. Let's say this, short castle, bishop e6. What else? What else are we allowing? Knight d5, some very concrete move. f4, bishop e3, but anyway, the idea is to go f4. a3, bishop e3, king h1, f4, I guess, takes. You take with the knight, of course, and knight e5. h3, a4, bishop e3. Yes, bishop e3. Yes, you have rook c8. And I don't know what this knight a4 is. Yes, a4, knight a4, bishop e7, bishop e2, bishop d4, g6, king h1. Yes, it is interesting. MVL against Levon, and we see this. So bishop e2 by MVL, h3, bishop d3, c takes, queen b6, a3, bishop e2, knight e7, knight e3, with the idea is always to get knight on c2, short castle, and here, yes, knight g6 is another attempt, which Caruana played recently against Grandelius. But knight f5, 11. And here we see that d takes c is the strongest. Yes, d takes c, you go a5, I guess. I don't really take with the bishop, I go a5. Why I don't take with the bishop? Because bishop d3, b4 is stronger. Bishop e7, probably some bishop e3. Bishop d3, bishop b6. Yes, always the idea is being bishop d3, rook e1, b5, a4, bishop d3, rook e1. Something like this. Yes, this is also a very interesting line. Rook e1, bishop c5, bishop d3, knight bd2, bishop c5, bishop d3. I think it's better to start with bishop d3, and here white can choose. Bishop f5 takes queen d5, queen b6, a4, h6. Yes. So bishop d3, c takes d, bishop takes f5, e takes f5, and here c takes d, bishop e7, and then black is playing bishop e6, knight d4, bishop e7. Black doesn't have any problems. 11 equalized easily. let's move further. Jan against Magnus. Bishop c4. Magnus doesn't play this line very often. Yes, short castle is being the main move. Magnus goes queen a5. Yes, and here I guess short castle is being the strongest. Short castle, short castle. Yes, d6 or short castle. So f3, yes, this allows queen b4 and knight b5, queen c4, so this knight e4. Yes, Jan didn't see, or he mixed up. So here already you should be careful, maybe taking on c6 or going some knight b5, which is very complicated. Yeah, something like this. a4, bishop b7, you take. So bishop b3, knight e4, takes, 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 king e2, d takes c, and f takes c doesn't work. And short castle or queen b3, black is just pawn up. Grishuk against Arjun, and here takes, and queen e1, queen e2, rook e1, d3. Black is having many moves. Knight d7, bishop d6, so bishop g4, h3. Arjun doesn't take on f3, goes this, g4. Bishop g6, knight e5, so takes, takes, takes. And Grishuk plays king g2. Yes, knight bd2 is another move. And we see that engine doesn't like much black's position. And queen e1, this is already lost. This is already lost. But anyway, it shows 0.60. Sacrifice is not approved. Yes. Fedosiev against Alireza. Bishop g5. C takes d. And now queen d4, knight c6. Knight e4, e5 is the strongest move, of course. And black is already better, but d takes c, e3. Yes, it's not much for white, but e5 you have maybe bishop e7, takes, short castle. Yes, maybe queen b3 stopping bishop d7 idea. Yes, very deep. But here bishop d7 has been played with the intention to go knight c6. Yes, queen c2, a3, bishop f3, knight f3, yes. Black is fine, more or less. Rook c1, knight c6, knight f3. Magnus against Jan. Yes, Jan went for this. We know that queen a4 is one move, short castle is another, so check. And Jan goes. Yes, you have like knight c6, bishop d7, knight bd7, so bishop d7, this, and Jan goes b5. And queen c2, knight a6 is the strongest. Jan plays this, d takes c, and this is already unpleasant position. Rook c8, short castle, knight b4, queen b3. Magnus could go bishop c5, short castle, and yes, knight e5, knight c3. It was maybe some prep by Jan, but I don't think, because he got unpleasant position. Yes, bishop d4, strongest, knight d7, queen d7, short castle, and yes, this is around equal already. a3, knight e4 has been played. Yes, knight e4, bishop e4, f5, knight c2. Yes, here takes knight rook b1, white is much better. Yes, Levon against MVL, and we see another, and bishop g5 by Levon, bishop e7, he took on f6, and bishop c4, bishop b3. This is just more than fine for black, so let's continue. MVL against Levon. Yes, knight e2, bishop e7, c5, c3, knight c6, yes, queen b6 or knight c6, and here engine says maybe f4 with the idea to go knight f3. So knight f3, Levon played bishop e7, and now h4. Yes, we see that Levon could take c takes, and f6. C takes, of course, c takes and f6. Yes, queen a5 has been played. a3, knight d4, I guess in the end b4. Yes, knight d, no, queen takes d4. So c takes d, b4, and c takes d, and now white is having b5 or bishop e3. Levon played knight f4, MVL played this, takes, and he went for this. Yes, for example, knight f6 was very interesting. Bishop e3 and knight g5. This is much better for white. Jan against Magnus. Queen c7, bishop e2, bishop b4. Yes, I guess bishop e2, bishop b4 by Magnus. And here we see queen b3 takes knight e4, short castle takes knight e4, queen d3 we see, knight c2, another move. And if I take on e4, you go queen d4. Queen d3. It's knight c6. Knight f3, short castle, knight c6, knight c2. Or knight c6. Bishop g5. And bishop e7 has been played, queen d6 was another move. But this line, we see that main problem is a knight c2 move. Queen d3 is also nice, but it's only 0.32. More or less we can play it, but knight c2 is stronger. But bishop d6 maybe. Grishok against Arjun. Yes, d6. c3, bishop c6. Rook e1, c3 knight e4, rook e1 b5. Rook e1 is very much possible move. Yes, rook e1. So takes rook e1. Do I have anything else? Like d4. It takes d, knight d4, c5, rook e1. Bishop g4. d4, h3. Takes. And here Arjun went wrong. Completely wrong. Bishop e7, knight d7. But he played g6 and I guess d4. Yes, d4. This is almost lost. Yes. The rest of Fedosiev. Yes, c5, one attempt. h6, bishop b4. So bishop b4, let's say rook c1. c5, h6, bishop h4. And now c5. Fedosiev played this, but he allowed a3. Takes. And this is better position for white, of course. He went rook e8 maybe. So he played this, bishop d3, some b6, even queen e2, just stopping bishop a6. Or even the way Alireza played. Yes, it is c4. What happened? Yes, you see that your provider unloaded the engine, which is a little bit surprising. But did you notice that evaluation has been changed when I switched to other engine? And yes, we are done with Champions Chess Tour divisions and some selected games, and now we are having Jerusalem Masters, Jordan Van Forest against Gorstenido. Yes, c5, short castle, knight c6, c3. Yes, bishop g4, bishop g6, c takes d, a6. So c takes d, and Jordan went c takes d. And we see that knight takes d4 is being the strongest move. Bishop b5, even c takes d, knight takes d4, knight e7. And what do I play? Do I continue like f4? Bishop b5, maybe knight f5, bishop d3, threatening to take on f5. So c takes d has been played. Bishop b4, knight e7, bishop g4. Yeah, the order went h3, and now bishop f3 would have been the strongest. And I don't know, maybe queen b6 first. Yes, bishop e3 and bringing the knight to e7. Bishop h5, and this is already unpleasant position. Yes, knight c3, for example, even. Okay, Ivanchuk Dubov. I had intention to try this line. So bishop b5, bishop c4, bishop e2, knight c6, bishop b5, bishop d7, bishop e2, bishop c4, bishop g7, f3, f3, and bishop e3. Bishop e3, bishop g7, f3. Yeah, let's say f3, knight c6. I guess we go bishop knight c6 after bishop e3 also. This. And bishop g7 is the main move at h5. With the idea of queen d2, then knight takes d4. Yes, we see that queen e2, knight takes bishop h6. Or now engine changed. No, queen e2 takes bishop h6, queen d2 takes h3, bishop c4, bishop d7. Yes, knight takes c6, b takes c, bishop b3, bishop g7, h3, bishop g7, queen d2. Queen d2 takes queen d4. Legendary Vasily Ivanchuk played bishop b3. Rook c8, knight a5, yes. You go bishop g7 and then knight a5 or knight a5 directly. And queen d2, short castle h3, queen d3. Not really taking on b3 at the moment. Going bishop g7. Rook d1, long castle, short castle h3, long castle. Yes, a6. King b1 is a very logical move to play. Bishop g5, rook e1, h3. b5. Yes, and here, but another decent move by Ivanchuk. Bishop g5, h3 is another move. Bishop g5. And b4, knight d5, knight b3. But Dubov played knight b3. White had c takes b or a takes b. Both moves are possible and fine. Still some advantage for white. b4 was stronger, short castle. And yes, this is probably complicated. g4 was the strongest. H takes g, h4, h3, and black is fine. Black is fine. Before knight d5, knight d5, he takes d, a5, rook e1, a4, bishop e7, queen a5, takes a takes b, rook f7, queen g5, rook d7, bishop d4, queen d4, b takes c, and queen f5 is coming. Let's go to Rothstein and Leonov. This we more or less know. And here, yes, many moves are possible, and this h3. Yes, knight bd7, a5, so knight e4, takes with the queen. Bishop takes, d takes. And maybe this type of positions are easier for white to proceed. Knight f4, rook c1, queen c2, short castle. Yes, we see that bishop e6 or knight d7. Bishop e6, bishop c4. So knight d7, queen c2, knight f6. Very logical play by Pavel Elyanov. Rook fd1. Max Rothstein plays very good. And now, for example, I think all the moves engine is suggesting is against d5, to stop d5, or either if white is anyway going d5 to have a better version, to be ready. Yes, and d5 white is being better. Yes, maybe it is possible to play. You go h3, and if knight bd7, yes, we are getting some rook b1, a3, short castle, queen c2, I guess. And if this, let's say we take, we go short castle, and now black should find this bishop e6, rook c1, bishop c4, rook e1. And if here this, I guess knight f6 is very logical move to play, and you go rook fd1. And now, I don't know, even b6. Of course, queen d8 is not the easiest move to make. Queen d6, knight g3. b6, d5, c5. Bishop d7, d5, c5. Yes, interesting. Yes, and Dubov against Rothstein. Knight d5, queen c8. Queen a4. Knight f3, c takes bishop d5, e4. Queen c2. C takes d has been played, bishop takes d5. And now Daniel went e4. Yes, I guess very logical move, bishop b7. And queen e2 or queen c2 has been played. No, queen e2, bishop a6, but I guess you have knight d3, knight c4, or rook e1 and c5. And here Daniel went d5, but this doesn't really work. Bishop d2, bishop, queen takes d2, he takes d, takes d, rook d8. Max played more than strong and got much better position against Dubov. So Jordan against Ivanchuk. Takes, knight c6. And already black is being better. Like queen a4, queen e3, queen c4, bishop b4 always, queen d3, bishop c5. Yes, here you should play bishop c5, and if I go queen g3, knight b4, bishop f4, d6. And instead of bishop f4, if I go queen g3, you have even knight e4, knight e4, queen e7. You have also knight b4. If bishop d3, you just go d5. And what if I go long castle? Do you take the pawn? Yes, you take it. Okay, queen c4. Yes, bishop b4 is there. a6 has been played. Not the strongest move maybe by legendary Vasily Ivanchuk. Bishop g5, bishop f4, b5, queen d3, bishop c5, long castle, d6. Short castle has been played, and now e5 was almost winning for white. Jordan didn't play it. Gorsteinido against Vital Porokhovsky. Yes, and here we see that e6, c takes d, bishop b4, nice e6, a3, d takes c, bishop c4, a6, so a6, and now c takes d, bishop d3 is there, and b3. Oh, but this doesn't work with Prag plate. Prag plate. How did c takes and what if he takes d? So 94. Ah, maybe Prag started with a3. Maybe Prag played this, and after this he played b3. This should be Abbasov, Prag Abbasov. And c takes, bishop e7, we see. Like takes, bishop d6 or bishop e7, bishop e2 short, black is just fine. Bishop b2, b6, g3, d takes, knight a5, bishop e2 short, castle b6. And if this, as you can take, you can also start with b6. Yes, I guess bishop d3, there is d takes c. Bishop e2, bishop b7, short castle d takes c, c takes d, knight d5. Knight d5, queen d5. E takes d, you also can take. But here you should take with the queen, and then queen e4 check is coming. I see. Svidler Gorstein, and this was bishop g4 move. And Svidler, what did he play? Bishop e3, bishop g5, h3, knight bd2. Knight bd2, c takes d, but Svidler took here. Takes. Yes, this is definitely better position. Knight e7, knight b3, so knight f3, knight c6, h4, bishop e7, h5, yes, queen b6 or h6, g3, bishop e3, bishop f4, rook d1, maybe the idea is rook d3, e5 short castle, g3, rook ad1, rook ac1, rook ad1, let's say. Now just rook c8, because the way black started playing, maybe not. Yes, this is unpleasant position. Rook d3 is coming. Even g4 engine likes knight h2. Bishop d8, knight d7, or bishop d8, bishop b6. Yes, bishop d8. Knight a5. Yes, this is very unpleasant. Ivanchuk Postny. Queen e7. There's knight f3, short castle, short castle. Rook e8 or knight d7. Rook e8 or knight d7. Bishop e3. Knight b6. Yes, rook e1. This is much better. a5, a4. Yes. Maybe this is interesting setup. Maybe queen e7 is the strongest, but you can maybe trade the queens. Yes, taking on e7. Yes, both captures are fine. Bishop takes or king takes. Yes, a5. Queen d3, b3, knight c3. Queen c2, knight c3, c6. Yes, here the idea is being knight d2, b5, a3, rook e1. Yes, knight e5, rook e1, a3, b3, b6. And Avital Borokhovsky played very logical bishop b2 move. Yes, if knight d2, anyway, b5, bishop b2, rook e1, a3. Yes, Elyanov played bishop a6, attacking the pawn on c4. Knight d2, b5. Yes, maybe here c5 is interesting. Knight bd7, b4, knight a4. Let's say I go knight bd7 and I go a3 or I go rook e1. Some complicated position. So queen c2, knight bd7, and e4, but b takes, and now knight b6 works. Black is already better, much better. Elyanov didn't see it. Yes, this is classical variation, bishop d7, and they got this, f3. So takes bishop e7 by Ilya Smirin. Bishop d3, queen d2, h4, king b1, queen c7. And g4 has been played by Jordan. Bishop e3, g4, h4, queen d2. Yes, queen d2 I played myself. g4, h4, queen d2. Yes, g4. Black is playing h5. G takes h, not with the rook, with the knight. And bishop e7 you can take, rook g1, h4, so rook g1, bishop g5, rook g5, and long castle is the main idea. Yes, you can also go here, takes, maybe this is slightly better. Yes, this idea is wrong, just queen d2. Yes, e5. Yes, this is also wrong because you are not really threatening queen g1, and this is much better for white. Svidler, Borokhovsky. Yes, this we more or less know. Yes, and here in this position many other moves are possible. I guess b4 is also possible very much. b4, c3, rook b8, queen d7. Knight c3. Bishop a2, c3, knight c3, h3, h3, the strongest move. And what's the idea? You take, yes, and something like this we get c4 or knight c3. Okay, knight c3, and here knight a5 is the strongest. Bishop d5, bishop a2, b4, knight d5, knight d2, c5. Yes, this I played a couple of times. But knight d2, this is not that good for black. Yes, first of all, you are having some knight d5, knight d6, knight d7, or knight d5, knight d6, c4. A takes, d4. Yes, knight d5 is maybe. So a takes, you take on a8. Takes, you go. Queen a1, h3, d4, knight d5. So d4. He takes knight d4, knight d6, which Avital didn't find. He played knight c6, and already knight b5 works. Knight d4. He of course wanted to take on d4, e4 after knight takes d4, but here e5, and white is already slightly better. Like going knight d5 and allowing opponent to take on d4, not the easiest, of course. And he went even wrong here by allowing this. This is already lost. Yes, not much games left. Ivanchuk, Svidler, rook e1. Yes, I recommend this bishop c5 line. We see that b5 is possible, d6 has been played. h3, you takes, and here you have bishop g5, h6, bishop h4, g5. So h3 by Ivanchuk, and rook e8. It's very nice move, but he takes this, he takes d5, e5, knight e4. This is not that good. So knight c3, for example, white is better. Bishop e3, white is also doing fine. Yeah, still playable position, but white is getting something. Knight c3. Jordan against Dubov. Bishop e3, knight c6. We see h5, and we see bishop d7. And again, bishop b3 has been played, knight a5, and in this position, we see, I think queen d3 has been played by Ivanchuk. h3, short castle, queen d3, queen d2, so queen d2, bishop g7, engine says, bishop g7, long castle, rook b8. So rook c8, Jordan went this, and now if you go knight c4, then you are in some trouble. Daniel played very logically. Not a6, knight b3, knight c4, bishop g7, king b1, and here maybe knight c4, but Daniel played this, and Jordan went h3, h3, with the idea is to go g4. Yes, b5, a3. So h4, rook e1, and here b5 I guess would have been stronger. But not rook h5. Yes, rook h5, and now white is in huge trouble. I mean black. Queen f2, or even knight e2. Yes, a takes b, c takes b. Yes, this is very unpleasant. Thank you very much, dear friends, for watching this video. Please leave your comments. Yes, I tried to check recent games with modern engines to just see which openings, which lines are trendy nowadays in high level, and also to maybe find some new positions, new lines, new moves in different openings. And maybe for some of you this video can be very useful. At least now we are aware of many lines. Once again, thank you very much for being with me, and please subscribe to my YouTube channel.